When it comes to being the strongest within your respective verse, a lot of characters do come to mind. Say Zeno from Dragon Ball, Soul King and within Bleach, so on and so forth. But a lot of people bring up Gojo Satoru from Jujutsu Kaisen, since he's considered to be the pinnacle within that verse. But in this video, I will be going over a lot of the highballed interpretations for Gojo's scaling and basically debunking him and showing you guys where he realistically scales. And I'll also be bringing up a lot of, say, countermeasures to basically bypass infinity that a lot of characters within fiction have the capability of doing. I'll firstly go over the AP section, then go over some speed related things that JJK fans tend to use to highball Gojo to an extreme extent. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. And if you guys have any, say, arguments against what I'm about to say, then put them down in the comment section below. Now, some people do use the fact that within the hidden inventory arc, when Gojo was fighting Toji, Gojo's hollow purple was able to tear through Toji himself, as well as Toji's cursed worm. People use this to scale Gojo to Universal Plus or into 4D. In other words, because there's a guide that states that Toji's cursed worm has a fourth dimensional space residing within it. But there's a few things wrong with this, or at least something that could contradict it, or just bring this statement into question. And that's if you actually look at the original kanji as well as translations of the statement, you would notice that its phrasing is questionable since it phrased the fourth dimensional stuff as an actual question or a shock statement rather than an actual confirmation that Toji's cursed worm actually has a fourth dimensional space residing within it. And even then, not every hollow purple is the same. The hollow purple Gojo used against Toji is completely different from the hollow purple Gojo used against Sukuna. If you were to use Gojo in cross-verse settings, you would need to prove that every hollow purple has the same destructive capability, and that he would use that specific hollow purple that he used against Toji in a cross-verse setting against someone like, say, TikTok, someone like, say, Goku, Ichigo, Luffy, etc. Plus, the scale isn't necessarily consistent for the verse at large. Another way people tend to scale Gojo is by upscaling Gojo from Dagon, and the fact that Dagon quote unquote created an island within his domain. But there are a few problems with this. Firstly, domains just give the user a temporary boost in stats. It gives the user basically a domain amplification once they're in the domain itself. It doesn't necessarily scale to the user's base normal stats. Secondly, you would need to prove the actual size of the island. The size of the island is needed for you to actually scale these characters to island level, since a lot of islands do vary in size, and there's a certain requirements for destroying an island to be island level or creating an island to be island level. And thirdly, all the main expansions wouldn't necessarily scale to the users in the first place, even if you were to prove the island's size. That's because it's just a basically, you know, representation of the user's innate domain. For those who aren't aware, an innate domain is a mental landscape that embodies the mind of the individual which they are born with. Innate domains serve as the foundation of an innate curse technique, but sorcerers, non sorcerers, and cursed spirits are born with them. This means that these domains don't scale anywhere to the fact that domain expansions are just representations of these metaphysical places. So anything that is created within the domain expansion isn't necessarily something to scale off of for the user itself. And in last major rank, people tend to scale Gojo higher than he is to planetary, and that's a main thing is they use Yuki's black hole. For those who aren't aware, another special grade sorcerer named Yuki created a black hole in her fight against Kinjaku. But you would need to prove that this black hole that she created has the exact same properties as a normal black hole to begin with, or that it's a real black hole. And you would need to prove that these properties exist with this black hole. An example of these properties you would need to prove is spaghettification, and other things as well. There's also the fact that Yuki literally doesn't scale to this since she needs to actually kill herself to perform this. And we also know from Yuki herself that if a certain mass is added, it begins to actually affect her, even if that same mass is less than a fraction of an actual black hole. And speaking about the mass of a black hole, due to the size of the black hole were shown within JGK, seemingly being the size of buildings, if it was a real black hole, it would actually alter the Earth's orbit around the sun and have long term consequences for the planet's ecosystem, which was never actually shown to be a problem after this black hole was created. And there's also the fact that the Yuki's black hole was actually a self destruction feat, which, if you know anything about power scaling and the self destruction feats in fiction as a whole, they don't necessarily scale to anyone, normally at least. And they don't scale to the user's base consistent strength. And it also doesn't scale to Gojo. Just because Gojo's strongest, it doesn't necessarily mean he scales to the self-destruction fates performed by other characters like Yuki. Just because you are stronger than someone doesn't necessarily mean you scale their self-destruction attack. An example of this would be Vegeta and Boo. Fat Boo, during his first interaction with Vegeta, was vastly superior to Vegeta in physical capabilities and just AP in general, and Vegeta was still able to harm and tear through Boo's body with his own self destruction attack. But that doesn't necessarily mean Vegeta is normally stronger than him. It still means that Boo would scale above Vegeta and doesn't necessarily scale to his self destruction attack. The same applies to here with Gojo and Yuki. There are some arguments to still get these characters to planetary, since, Sukuna and Gojo scale on the same level, and Sukuna has a back of volume statement saying that he can threaten the whole world or something similar. But for those who aren't aware, Sekai in Japanese can mean multiple things. It doesn't necessarily have one. Meaning, Sekai can mean the world, yes, that is correct, but it can also mean universe and or society as well. But if we actually look at the phrasing of the context of that one statement for Sukuna, this statement says the world as we know it, and looking at it contextually, that could just mean that it has like Sukuna has the power to have an everlasting effect on the structure of the world, and that could just means that he can affect the society itself, the society of our world, not necessarily meaning that he can just blow up the fucking planet. And considering the context of what makes a special grade curse like Sukuna a special grade curse, it actually makes sense that it could just mean society and not planet itself. So if Gojo isn't Universal Plus, if he isn't planetary, if he's not even island level, how high does his AP actually scale to? Well, Gojo has a lot of statements for himself saying that he is the strongest character within the manga. These statements come from Gojo himself, from Gege Okutami, or whatever, and other characters. He's arguably stronger than Sukuna, which is a whole different topic, but yeah, he does scale to a full power Sukuna, due to their fight. Plus, Gojo was arguably holding back due to Sukuna being in Megumi's body, blah blah blah, and Gojo being able to blow off full power of Sukuna's arms with a 200% hollow purple. For reference, even a 15 finger Sukuna within Yuji's body destroyed large portions of a city, which was calced at small city level, which happened in the Shibuya arc. Which this isn't inconsistent, since Gojo was literally shown shaking. I believe it was Shibuya, but I could be wrong, when he was leaving the prison realm, which that was also calculated around large town level to small city level. So Gojo consistently scales to small city to city level. Now, as for Gojo's speed scaling, I've seen arguments getting Gojo to infinite speed, if not inaccessible speed, which, looking at it from an outside perspective or an unbiased perspective, this is absolutely crazy and untrue. Most of those arguments come from fucking TikTok scalers, which isn't too surprising, to be completely honest. But one argument is that since Infinity is an automatic ability, and how Infinity as an ability works, basing itself off of the tortoise and the hare paradox, that means that Gojo has infinite speed, if not higher, since he can cancel out characters with infinite levels of speed, which is honestly an absolutely fucking retarded argument to make. I'll go over Infinity later on and ways to counter it, but just because Infinity is an automatic ability, it doesn't necessarily mean it's an instant ability. Automatic and instant are two completely different things. The objective meaning for automatic quite literally just means a process or a device that works on its own, or something that is done or occurring spontaneously. And considering the context of Infinity and Gojo, it's quite obvious it's the initial, meaning that it's a process that works on its own, not as an instant ability that cancels out any infinite speed attack. Another infinite speed argument is using red and blue, but all like blue creates is a sinkhole in space by manifesting negative space that causes erasure of normal space, and thus a sink effect akin to a gravitational pull occurs. It has nothing to do with infinity, nor does it have infinite output, nor does it have like infinite a pull at infinite speed. Uh, and there's also the inaccessible levels of speed that has been argued for Gojo, but that's mostly going off of him like existing or moving within the prison realm, which is stated to have like no concept of time, or like time doesn't flow there. But there are a lot of things to contradict this line of scaling for Gojo. Firstly, it's stated that to escape the prison realm, you can just kill yourself, or you need to kill yourself, meaning that even regular people can move within the prison realm, meaning that the only reason you can move is because of some sort of binding vow. Secondly, there's also the fact that Maki and everyone else was able to see Gojo and Sukuna fight within the viewing room, even though these characters are comparable and struggling against finite levels of speed, or like Mach free fucking speed, like what Maki did. And there's also the fact that there are multiple points within the story where time has actively passed, even though there's no reason for Gojo in this point of the story to not go out all out. An example would be during the Shibuya arc when Gojo was killing the transfigured humans. There's no reason for Gojo to go all out, at least in terms of speed, and use this inaccessible level of speed if he actually did have this level of speed, which he doesn't. And the last thing I want to talk about is the ways to actually counter Gojo's Infinity. Infinity has a lot of things to counter it and allow other characters within fiction to bypass Infinity. I'll only name three different ways, but within my Discord server, there are over 30 different ways for characters to bypass Infinity, but I'll only name a few just for the video. One way to counter Infinity is simply just by being faster than Gojo himself, as suggested within the Hidden Inventory arc around chapter 76, I mean. For Infinity to kick in, Gojo's automatic targeting needs to identify what's attacking him to begin with, which only works on anything that it can detect. So anything or anyone faster than Gojo and faster than Gojo's automatic targeting would bypass Infinity. The reason it seems like no one within JJK is able to bypass Infinity via raw speed alone or bypass the auto detection ability is simply just because no one is fast enough to outright blitz Gojo. They're all within like a range that Gojo can't keep up with. And even the characters that you can argue is slightly faster, which is basically just Sukuna. He's not really like fast enough to outright speed blitz them. But even then, whether who's stronger or faster is really up to debate. So assuming that no one else in fiction can't bypass Gojo's Infinity, since he's one of the strongest and fastest within the verse, is a no limits fallacy. And Infinity still needs to detect what is coming at him to begin with. The only difference between Infinity prior to the arc and Infinity post arc is just that it works automatically now. But the automatic part of it doesn't necessarily mean it's instant, as said before. It just means that it's able to detect whether or not something is a threat or not on its own. Like, that's why the pencil and rubber scene happened later on after that statement was made. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of people who tend to take Infinity and highball it and say, oh, you need infinite speed to bypass Infinity. No, you don't. Anyway, another way to counter Infinity is via power nullification, which I say this because it was confirmed by Gojo within the Jogo and Gojo fight at the beginning of the series that if Jogo had a denser domain, then Gojo's Infinity would have been nullified, which means that levels of power nullification can affect Infinity, meaning that anyone with some level of power nullification or anything similar can actually just turn Gojo's Infinity off, basically. And the third way is via spatial manipulation. Due to how Infinity works, it relies on a finite space to work. It, if that finite space is being manipulated to any degree or even destroyed, then Gojo's Infinity would not operate to any degree or to the same degree. This would mean that it wouldn't work at all, or as I said, would work to any normal degree, meaning that anyone with spatial manipulation basically bypasses Infinity and would one shot Gojo if they're strong enough. So, in conclusion, Gojo is like small city level to city level max with like potentially subsonic to massively hypersonic levels of speed, depending on how you want to scale Kashimo, Hikari, stuff like that, dodging the lightning. And Infinity as an ability isn't that powerful. Like, it's good, but in comparison to characters within fiction, it can be easily bypassed normally. And anyone who has any of the free abilities I mentioned, or like anything else, you can make an argument for that bypassing Infinity. But yeah, Gojo is severely overrated. He's probably one of the most overrated characters within the last probably 5, 10 years in terms of power scaling. But yeah, that's about it. Slán.